me get this clear. Cause I had no idea. I feel like I did too much. I feel like I did too much. Cause
Yo, it's Eternal Sage back with another part of I'm back with another what if. This part is part 2 what if Naruto was in Uchiha, and I'm going ahead so y'all go ahead and go. Yeah, we finna start.
Kakashi was walking through the streets of Konoha. The damage could have been worse given what happened, but still, after last night it was safe to say that things wouldn't be normal for a while. The loss everyone sustained left them all in a state of sadness. There hadn't been word yet on how many have been lost, but there were many that got hospitalized. A lot of the survivors can no longer be shinobi as the injuries were too grave. What troubled Kakashi the most was that his sensei hadn't been seen after he teleported the Kyuubi away. No one knew anything. All anyone knew was that the Kyuubi was defeated. Kakashi wasn't dumb, and if he hadn't heard anything then, that had to mean that Minato died. Kakashi looked up to the Hokage monument, and from his single visible eye, a tear shed as he felt he knew that again he lost someone close to him. Hokage office. Shisui, sorry to keep you waiting. Shisui stood up upon seeing the third Hokage enter the room. It's okay, Lord Third. The council is being assembled. They must know of what has transpired. This also means that Naruto's status as Jinchuriki will be known. And of his parents. That is not necessary right now. Obviously Fugaku knows, but nobody else needs to know. What if he wants Naruto? Shisui said. Hiruzen pondered on that. He hadn't really considered it before. Surely Fugaku and Mikoto would wish to be able to raise the son of their friend. However, they wished for Shisui to look after Naruto. Maybe we will speak with him prior. He'll respect the wishes of Minato. Hiruzen said. There was a knock on the door, and this surprised the two of them. Hiruzen gave permission for someone to enter. Ah, Kakashi. What a surprise. What can I do for you? Hiruzen said. Honestly, he wasn't looking forward to breaking the news to Kakashi. He lost so much already in his young life. Hearing of more would only worsen things. Kakashi glanced around. He recognized Shisui, then he saw the baby, and then looked to Hiruzen once more. So he is gone. Kakashi said. Yes, he is. This is Naruto. Shisui said. Kakashi watched over Kushina from time to time, as he was one of Minato's personal Umbu members and was trusted by him more so than others. Mainly that was formed since Kakashi had been his student. That led to him knowing about Naruto's upcoming birth. Also, he now contains the Kyuubi. Come again. Kakashi said, looking up from Naruto and back at Shisui. He sealed the Kyuubi within Naruto with help from Kushina. Listen, Kakashi, I would like for you to help Shisui train Naruto when he's old enough to understand. Minato entrusted him to the two of you. Hiruzen said. I'll gladly help in any way. Shisui and Hiruzen smiled and were glad to know that they had been right. Although losing Minato hurt so much, together they can try and make it all better. Now to deal with the council. Hiruzen said. It was obvious that this was going to be a long meeting. The council made up of each of the major clan heads, and a few members of the civilian side made up the council, along with the Hokage's advisors. However, since Minato was now dead, the question of who to take his place would be asked. Hiruzen knew he had to retake office, as he knew that Danzo couldn't be entrusted with the position and no one else really had the support to be Hokage. Orochimaru deserted. Tsunade had no intention on returning after her losses, and Jiraiya had a spy network and would probably not be emotionally prepared to take the seat, as he would soon learn that his student and great friend has died. That considered the last of the few people that were being in question for fourth Hokage had been Fugaku. He had the power, but didn't have the support of the people or as much support as Minato. Maybe now he could. Then there was also Danzo. He has been gunning for the position for ages now. His love for Konoha was never doubted. His methods, however, were never great. Danzo hated and distrusted the Uchiha, and would do anything to get rid of them. He only never did anything towards Minato, since he was the only Uchiha he knew he'd lose to. That and Minato was actually rather different from other Uchiha. For some reason there wasn't a distrust. Everyone would most likely approve of Hiruzen's decision to retake office, aside from Danzo of course, but no one would really care about his opinion anyways. 30 minutes later. Thank you all for gathering this morning. I know that last night was hard on everyone. Hiruzen said. The council gathered, and among them was Fugaku Uchiha, Suminyazuka, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shibuya Barame, Shikaku Nara, Hayashi Hayaga, Chauza Akimichi, and then the advisors being Danzo, Homura and Koharu. I sadly must inform you that there is another loss you must know. Hiruzen looked into space, not looking anyone in the eye, and sighed. The fourth Hokage has died during his fight against the Kyuubi. The room was silent. Their Hokage was dead, and now the village was unprotected per se. The Kage position in person as Kage was the village's shield against attack. They were the village's last line of defense. Without the Hokage, the village is vulnerable. As such, I'll be assuming the role of Hokage again. Hiruzen said, bringing everyone out of their thoughts. Danzo was infuriated but said nothing, as now wasn't the time. He knew the village needed someone to fill the role, and most of all he knew Hiruzen's power. Hiruzen wasn't called the god of shinobi for nothing. Danzo and he were teammates, and he got to see his feats firsthand. Hiruzen's reputation would do well to quell plots to attack Konoha. Even in old age, Hiruzen was still one of the most powerful shinobi in Konoha, and even in the 5 great nations. The other council members also approved of the thought of the Sandaime retaking the position. Hiruzen made eye contact with Fugaku, and without saying a word was able to express that they needed to talk after everyone left. So what do we do? Asked Hayashi clan head of the Hayaga. We rebuild, Hiruzen said. With that, everyone started to leave except for Fugaku. Hiruzen made a waving gesture, and the Umbu were gone. What of the child Minato and Kushina were expecting? Fugaku went straight to the point, as he didn't care about pleasantries at the moment. Shisui, come out. Out of the shadows came Shisui, still holding Naruto. They sealed the Kyuubi into their son. This is Naruto. What do you plan to do with him? Surely you won't just put him in the orphanage. Shisui will raise him, Hiruzen said. Fugaku looked at Shisui. He had no bad thoughts towards him. In fact, he respected the young Uchiha more than most. His power would someday soon surpass his own. He looked back to Hiruzen. He's still young. I am more than ready, Shisui said. You didn't let me finish, Fugaku said with a slight chuckle. You are still young, but you will have my support should you need it. This caught Shisui off guard, as he was ready to start an argument to get him to approve. I am guessing that it was his wish, as such I won't stand against it. Mikoto will be a little sad. I understand the need of secrecy, and I won't tell my kids of his true heritage. You two can come see him whenever you please, Fugaku-sama. Much appreciated, Fugaku said with a smile. He looked to Hiruzen and surprised them once again. So what is your relation to Minato? He wouldn't entrust his son to just anyone, and seeing as how Kakashi wasn't the one chosen, you must be even closer. Hiruzen looked at Shisui and got a nod. He is Minato's nephew. That explains it. However, it's odd that you weren't around whenever we came. No matter. If that is all, I'll be returning to my family before gathering the police force. Yes, you're dismissed. When he was gone, Shisui stated his surprise at how easy it went. In the end, they were both glad that things went far easier than anticipated. The biggest surprise of all being Danzo's silence, however, it wouldn't bother him. So when will you tell the council of Naruto and the Kyuubi? Hopefully not for a long while. Well, let's take you to your new home. About 10 minutes later, they had finally made it to the house they will live at. It was located near the outskirts of the village, and they had about 4 acres of land. They were distant in case Naruto ever began to lose control to the Kyuubi. The hope was to limit damage and death, but even so, it would only do so much. I can work with this. Once he is 4, I can begin training him, and this space is absolutely perfect. Yes, however, it also serves to dash. I know, Sandaime-sama. You don't need to tell me. Hiruzen nodded also. You now being a Jonin means that we want you to take someone to train. We've selected someone you may be interested in. Who would that be? Shisui said, raising an eyebrow. Itachi Uchiha, son of Fugaku Uchiha. Itachi Uchiha, interesting. To take Itachi through an exercise that would last 3 days. The goal was to track a target and capture them for intel. During the exercise, he was to teach survival skills and of course methods of tracking to hopefully complete the goal. Shisui didn't know much about Itachi aside the fact that he was the son of the clan head and that he was apparently gifted. This he would have to check out. Itake was only 5, so it would be interesting to say the least. Before that, however, he had to get situated in the new house and get someone to look after Naruto. He wanted Kakashi as he was the only one he trusted. But this made him wonder, if Kakashi and him both were to be on mission, who'd look after Naruto? Hiruzen might, but he's still as busy as Hokage, so he wouldn't add to his troubles? Maybe Kakashi trusts someone, he'll have to figure that out. The village was starting to bounce back, pretty quick too. Rebuilds were underway and even some fortifying. It looked like they were planning to expand the walls, especially around the southern regions. There wasn't talk as for what the expansion of the village was for. Guesses were to just house more and just create more within the village, but it was odd still. There were rumors of a new compound system to take place, but at the moment it was speculation. As the training exercise neared, Shisui had been preparing his tools when he learned the hard way of making sure that nothing was within Naruto's reach. He'd managed to get one of Shisui's kunao and almost managed to try to eat it before he noticed. That would have ended so bad. Finally the day came and Shisui began walking to the house of Fugaku Uchiha. It was located a few blocks away from the police headquarters in the center. People were beginning to be more livelier as most had been mourning to this point. It was nice to see them returning to normal. Time can work miracles in some senses. But soon it would be on to business. However, Shisui didn't always take it too seriously, tending to be a little more lax than most. But now he would see the type of person Itake was. Ah, Shisui, you are here for Itake, duh. Good morning, Fugaku-sama, and yes. Is he ready? Fugaku nodded. Itake. Shisui's here. Here.
My fault.
A few moments later, Itake walked out. He was about 7 inches shorter than Shisui and had hair that reached the base of his neck. Hello Itake, I am Shisui. I'll be training you from now on. Shisui said, holding out a hand. Itake took it and shook his hand. He looked back to Fugaku, then stood beside Shisui awaiting their departure. We'll be back in 3 days. Shisui said, and with that he touched Itake's shoulder and shunshined them to the entrance of the Forest of Death. Do you know our objective, Itake? We are to track down a fugitive and bring them in for intel. Yes, that is the main objective. So without a further ado, let's begin. They opened the gate and entered the forest. This forest is filled with deadly animals and is used for high-level shinobi. No one other than Jonin will generally go in there. Some Chunin, but for the most part not many really liked being in the forest. It is a great place for training, however. They were walking through trying to find some clues. The fugitive was given a 2-hour head start in setting up their decoys and going about their escape. In a way it was like keep away. The fugitive was never to leave the forest, and remain hidden by setting up traps, decoys, and anything to not be caught. There were no rules aside from the restriction of leaving the forest. Should there be confrontation, anything goes. Shisui was going to let Itake take the reins on this exercise as he wanted to see how well he could do, offering support when needed. There wouldn't be a point in this if Shisui led, as he had more than enough skill to handle this. Most of his missions were B rank or higher, and these types of situations often happen, especially when dealing with spies. Plus, Itake being a prodigy, well, he wanted to see about that. Ah, find something, Itake. Itake was reaching into a tree trunk. Hi. A scroll. Itake handed the scroll to Shisui, who opened it up and looked at the contents. It contained information on the fugitive, saying that he was an Earth-style user and a Genjutsu user. Good eye, Itake. We got some useful information on our fugitive. What do you think? Shisui handed the scroll back to Itake. The decoys can be even more intricate given that we could accidentally trigger a Genjutsu of his. That's right. Keep your senses up. Shisui said with a smile as they moved on. He's got the book smarts. No doubt about that. I wonder about his skills. Shisui thought as they were moving through the trees. He smiled when he saw an opportunity. About 50 meters ahead of him, he noticed a large snake. It was half the size of a summoning. That was the odd thing about this forest. All the animals in it were abnormally huge, and that's what made it so deadly. As he saw it charging at him since he was in front of Itake, he just swung over to the side and turned around to see Itake make 2 slices through the snake, cutting it into 3 pieces with his tanto. Not bad. Good job, Itake. Well, he's got some Kenjutsu training. I could definitely teach him some techniques in that. Why are you smiling? Ah, it's nothing, Itake. But look, there seems to be two paths. They dropped down from the trees and now looked at two paths where it seems someone may have traveled. They were in a slightly moistened environment, so the footsteps were easy to notice since they sunk beneath the surface slightly. So which way do you think? Itake walked to the one on the left and began to look at it, analyzing every bit he could take in, and the same on the right. The tracks are too perfect on this side. Our fugitive wants to get away. These are as if he stood in place on each foothold. There's no indication that a step was taken aside from the fact that there is a track. Well done. You are certainly right. Given that he's an Earth-style user, it is safe to assume that he manufactured those tracks to hopefully take us off his course. Shisui patted his shoulder and they began to follow the other set of tracks. Itake's knowledge and skills were impressing to Shisui. The only issue in his head was that he did things solely by the book. Like there was no flexibility in his thinking. It was good to have that knowledge, but in the real world it isn't always black and white. He'd have to try to get Itake to change that. The tracks led to a river and Shisui began to get some water and filter it. However, Itake was still looking around. You know, I think a fish may have left that mark, Shisui said as Itake seemed to be rubbing the moss on the side of a rock in the river. Itake looked frustrated by that. So it's not a decoy. Everything starts to look like them. Being able to confuse your pursuers is the goal, as it gives many options. I guess I need better tracking skills. You're half right, Itake, Shisui said and took a sip of water. Here. They sat down on the rock that Shisui was on. It's because you're exceptional, Itake, that it's harder. Having the skills for tracking a fugitive is important, but so is understanding how he thinks. I see, Itake said and smiled. Shisui stood up, noticing the sun going down. Well, let's move on to the next part of the exercise. Itake nodded and they began to catch a few fish and set up an area to be situated for camp. Don't the books say to not use campfires? Shisui looked up. You're exceptional, Itake. I'm still inexperienced. Haha, you're right about that. Don't laugh, Itake said. I'm sorry. It just makes me happy. You've taught me a lot. That's what makes me happy. It's nice to eat a meal with someone that makes you at ease. Itake widened his eyes in surprise. Eat while it's hot, Itake. Itake took a bite and then looked back up to Shisui. I awakened the Sherry Non. Is that why you don't want to be at home? How? It's the look you had, and that you came instantly to my side as if eager, not out of excitement. He noticed from the beginning. I understand, Itake. Just know, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. Itake smiled. After all, that's what friends are for, right? Itake nodded and smiled. It felt as some of the weight that he'd been carrying was slowly coming off. Suddenly they heard the sound of swords clanging together and immediately put out the fire and ran towards the sounds. What surprised them was to see an Umbu fall into the 6-inch deep stream with a gash on his shoulder. Are you alright? Shisui asked. He then noticed that what made him fall was some wire around his ankle and that it cut into him a bit. Metal wires, this can be dangerous. Suddenly 3 more Umbu dropped in. More Umbu, Shisui said. Hand us the traitor, the middle Umbu, who was also the biggest of the 3, said. What proof do you have to say he's a traitor? Shisui said. He's not quite the traitor, however he was information in regards to who it actually is, the one on the left said, who was the woman of the group. What? That's what you're after? I'm going to Lord Hokage, the injured Umbu said. I'll help you to the best of my abilities. I, Itake Uchiha, will also help Shisui. Itake, Shisui said quietly as he glanced over at him, surprised that he'd jump in like this. Itake was smart and talented, no doubt about that, however these were Umbu and this would get dangerous. Suddenly the female Umbu threw a kunao at the head of the injured Umbu and he was revealed to be a water clone. Oh well, my wires are covered in poison. He won't be getting far before his body goes numb. The 2 male Umbu charged at Shisui with their swords out while the female went after Itake, pushing him back away from Shisui. You Uchiha would dare try to push your luck and get in the way, she said to Itake before charging. Itake kept being forced to back up as she attacked with 2 swords vs his 1. Her attacks were acrobatic and with a final strike she spun to add more momentum into a more powerful swing. Itaki had been barely keeping up and got knocked back with the final blow, giving him some much-wanted space. Shari-nan, Itaka said as his eyes changed from black into a spinning two-tomo Shari-nan. Then she charged once more as she didn't want to give him any time to think of a plan. Now her movements were much easier for Itaka to react to, since he was practically one step ahead, since his eyes can perceive her movement before it's done. Although now his defense was being strengthened, he still could not get any offense in since he wasn't exactly faster than her. Plus she didn't leave many chances to attack. Having two swords allowed her to always maintain pressure, and if he parried one blow and tried to attack, she still had a second blade to continue her advance. At this point it wasn't going anywhere and she decided to switch it up. She started throwing shuriken at Itaki and directing them with her wire. Itaka would dodge easily and then she'd change their direction with the wire, making them land in trees or rocks. She threw a few kunai with the wire and those would get dodged and embed themselves on the floor behind Itaki. She keeps adding layers to the wire, doubling or even tripling over each other, creating some sort of pattern. As Itaka kept dodging, she began to try and increase the volume, as it seemed like she was finishing off her plan of sorts. With the last few, Itaka jumped through the air and she had thrown 3 more shuriken in preparation of that. He was forced to spin in midair to dodge the 3. I can see it. So this is the power of the Shari-nan. After dodging the previous 3, he saw 3 more and threw his sword through centers of the shuriken, and the sword got impeded on a stone, to which he landed standing on the handle of his sword. The shuriken had still been spinning and he looked impassively at her. "You've fallen into my trap, Uchiha." She cut a wire beside her. The wires all started to respond and some were snapping around Itaka, but rather than ensnaring him, all of a sudden the wires changed course and caught around her throat and wrist, choking her. How? A few minutes earlier. Shisui vs 2 Umbu. Shisui began on the defensive as both Umbu attacked him. They both would strike one after another, keeping him on the defensive. Each strike he blocked effortlessly, and had it been a single opponent he could counter, but there being 2, the other wouldn't allow that. The bigger one tried to jump up in the air to do a powerful strike downwards, but Shisui sidestepped it, and as he was going to slash him, the smaller Umbu launched over the other, trying to stab Shisui, to which he pushed the blade to his left using his tanto and spun to his right, backhanding the Umbu with his left. He followed up by sending a right kick to the Umbu's back, which made him fall to the ground. Shisui turned around quick enough to block a strike from the bigger Umbu and he jumped away. Looks like Itaki has things handled. Guess I'll end things here. He brought his hands together, teleportation jutsu. Shisui began running around them, and suddenly 2 more of him could be seen to his right, then another 3 on the opposite side of the Umbu mirroring the other 3. Then 2 more sets to make 4 sets of Shisui running around them in an evenly spaced increment. Shadow clones, the smaller Umbu said. The bigger Umbu shook his head. No, they're after image clones. I can't tell which is the real one, the smaller one said as he blocked a sword strike from one clone on his right, then a kick from his left. Suddenly one appeared behind him and chopped the back of his neck, knocking him out. Enough of this, the bigger Umbu said, and slammed his fist in the stream, causing a shockwave which forced the water up in the air. He looked up and saw that the clones still remained surrounding him, all holding their swords out in front of them with the blade parallel to the ground and left hand against the back of the blade. How are they still here? The Umbu asked. Shisui appeared behind him with his tantos tipped to the Umbu's back. My teleportation jutsu has no mass, therefore my clones won't be destroyed, he heard a loud whistle. Looks like the Jonin observing our training exercise have noticed. He backed off and sheathed his tanto. Upon doing so, his clones vanished and left him alone behind the Umbu. The Umbu went and grabbed his teammates. We will be watching you, Shisui Uchiha, Itaki Uchiha, the Umbu said, and shined away with his knocked out teammates. Who were they? Those Itaki were Lord Danzo's Umbu. I think it's time we start to head back. The exercise is over. Itaka began to take a step when he noticed a sharp pain through his foot and stumbled slightly. Take it easy, Itaki. Let me see. Shisui had Itaka sit down and he checked out his ankle before wrapping it. It'll be okay, just stay off it. He took Itaki onto his back, much to his displeasure, which made Shisui laugh. They were finally back in the village when Itaki asked about why his ankle had been hurt. There's a slight gap in between what your Shari-nan sees and how your body reacts. You see, no matter what, your body will always be slower than the perception of your eyes. They get stronger as you get stronger. so I'll always get hurt using the Sharingan. No. You're just not used to the new perception. You adapted quickly, and I'm impressed by that. However, as you can tell, you've got some training to do. Itake made an annoyed look. Don't worry, Itake, you'll get there soon. However, what you did tonight was risky, first off by engaging the Umbu and second by testing out an untrained power in the heat of combat. I understand, but I couldn't just leave you to fight them alone and I had to use the Sharingan. Haha, don't be calling me weak, Itake. I can handle myself, you know. No, that's not what I dash. I know, Itake. Just be careful, alright? Just remember to never try untrained power in combat. It may have ended alright now, but it may not always be the case. I will, Shisui. Itake passed out finally and Shisui smiled as he continued walking. 10 minutes later he arrived to Itake's home and surprisingly Fugaku was outside. Back already? How'd he do? He's exceptional, Fugaku-sama. I can definitely work with him, no problem. In fact, I'd like to start tomorrow. Of course. That's really good to hear. You said this was to be a 3-day exercise. What happened? I'm not exactly sure how classified this will become, but I'm sure that what I tell you will be right, seeing as it wasn't too major. We ran into an Umbu and 3 of Lord Danzo's Umbu. Itake fought one and handled himself well. Outside of that I can't really say anything else. Fugaku just nodded. I'll take him inside, thank you. When will you come for him? 8. Okay. Shisui shunshined to his house. Itake, you don't cease to amaze. I can tell that you and I are going to be good friends. Shisui smiled, seeing Naruto sleeping on Kakashi's lap, who was also sleeping on the couch facing the TV. Aw man, he's gonna get Naruto addicted to that thing.